So a couple of weeks ago, I took a look at a bad Omen. I'm hoping this is a good one. Let's find out. Alright, so first things first, this is a 13th generation i7 with DDR5 memory running at 5200. It has 16 gig, 1 terabyte SSD in it, NVMe drive, obviously, and it comes packaged beautifully. Of course, the power brick's in here, everything going well. I like the way they packaged it. I like the way they wrapped it. Everything looks good so far. Let's go ahead and run some tests, see what it looks like. I'll open it up, we'll show that. I'll start running a couple of benchmarks and we'll see how it compares and how it really does. So this Omen is a 16.1 inch. It has 144 hertz display and complete with an NVIDIA RTX 4050 and a 13th Gen i7. So more than enough to handle whatever they're going to throw at it. And we're going to go ahead and get it charged up and do some benchmarks.
Now, I didn't do my usual full slate of benchmarks, and part of that's because I'm in the middle of changing some of that stuff around, trying to make it a little bit easier. And this also, I didn't have a whole lot of time to test. I wanted to make sure I took a look at this, saw some of the good things and some of the bad things, some of the things I like about it, some of the things I don't. Overall, I really, really do like it. One of the things I did notice very early on, very quickly, is it gathered dust. I mean, quickly. As soon as I took the covering off, it seemed like it tried to attract it. And it's probably because of just the surface. It reminded me a little bit of static electricity, like if you rub your balloon on your hair or use one of those, I'm not going to mention the brand name, but those dusters that use static to help pick everything up. It did seem to almost immediately attract some dust. Now, it's still great looking, easy to brush off. It didn't affect anything, obviously. But anyway, when we did run these benchmarks, I was very, very impressed. So I figured probably just the easiest thing to do would run a bunch of these tests at 1080p high, kind of give an overview of how everything went and how smoothly everything was, or how difficult it might have been to run. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was the first thing I ran, and it 1080p high, 113 frames a second. It was really, really good, really smooth. The colors looked really sharp. It really looked... I was impressed with the display itself. Usually I only see a display like that. I don't see it in a laptop very often, and especially not with the laptops I end up with, because I end up with somebody's secondhand laptop. This was by far one of the best displays I've seen on a laptop. I was really, really impressed with it. Borderlands 3, again, it ran very smoothly. The temperatures, I didn't have MSI Afterburner up on the whole thing, but I could tell the fans weren't ramping up very high, so it was not getting it wasn't getting as warm as I would normally expect Borderlands. I actually heard more fans going during Shadow of the Tomb Raider than I did with Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 usually heats up the GPU and really kicks everything in. You can hear the fans ramp up. There was none of that this time. There was a little bit, but it was not nearly as loud as Shadow of the Tomb Raider was. So that 73 frames per second was actually pretty solid, and I was very, very happy with that result as well. And I'm starting to think that this combination of this 13th Gen i7 and this 4050 of all things, RTX 4050, is not a bad combination at all. So the next one I did was Forza Horizon 5. Again, very impressed with this, 1080p high, very smooth, 103 frames per second. And again, this just, especially the opening cutscenes and the opening scenes where you're going through as you start the game and it makes you go through some of that stuff, some of the scenery and everything, looked gorgeous. I mean, it really, really outdid itself on this display. I can't say enough about how good the display looked. And even from a little bit off center, I kind of looked a little bit from the sides. It still looked very, very good. But from dead on, from the distance you would be on a laptop when you're using a laptop, this thing looked amazing. It was gorgeous. Again, over 100 frames per second, very, very solid 1080p. Cyberpunk, I just went 1080p with just the normal settings. I didn't try to up anything or do any performance or mess anything with crowd density or anything like that. I just ran her straight through. She 76 frames per second, very, very solid. Again, looked very good. The you could tell some of the ray tracing and stuff like that was on, because during the like the water puddles when it was going through part of that, the reflections and everything looked very, very good. It was very smooth through the bar scene. It looked outstanding. I was this laptop just, I mean, almost had my mouth watering how good at this point this thing was performing. Then I went ahead and went to Starfield, because I know that I've had issues playing Starfield with other systems. And although I don't have a benchmark, I did try to play this a little bit. And I would say averaging between 75 and 80 frames per second, somewhere around the 77, 78 frames per second is where it stayed most of the time. It was pretty consistent in that 75 to 80 range. Did not get warm, did not heat up. I didn't hear the fans kick in. That was the other thing that was on Starfield on my editing rig when I was playing that. I did notice that even though the fans didn't kick up very much, it was putting off some heat because, well, we already mentioned that in another video talking about where AIO versus tower cooler and all that stuff, and the where all those temperatures go, or where all those that air goes when you're playing games. But this didn't have that problem. It was still the keyboard. When I was messing around with the keyboard during this gameplay, the keyboard still stayed reasonably cool. I couldn't tell that there was a heating solution, and don't know exactly where the heating solution was because I didn't open it up. But it did not feel like it was one of those things. Sometimes on a laptop, something heats up. The fans are going, and when you're resting your hands on it above the keys, you can feel that. This had none of that. I didn't experience any of that. And Starfield was one of the games that I was playing through that I didn't run the benchmark on. So I would have had an opportunity to go ahead and feel any kind of heat coming up or being uncomfortable. And there was none of that. It was the best way I can put it was very comfortable. The keyboard was a great size. The keys felt good. The display was beautiful. We've mentioned that. I like the fact that it opened easily. I didn't have to put much effort into trying to open it, and it wasn't quite open with one hand, but it wasn't far off. I think it's probably, after a little bit of use, it probably would, and I feel very, very comfortable that it would stay the same place that wherever you put it. It was a couple of different positions I tried, and I never had any kind of issues. And we played around with it. I thought my brother-in-law was going to get tired of waiting for me to give him his laptop because I kept playing with it and kept playing with it. But it was just that good of an experience. I also ran Cinebench R23 in it. Got a score of a little over 12,600, which was phenomenal. This is it's an i7, but it is still a laptop. It's a 13620, I believe. It's 13620H, I believe, is what the processor is. RTX 4050, like I had mentioned before, the laptop version. And I realized that the 4050 is scaled down, but I was expecting something that reminded me more of an RTX 3060 than it would have a 4000 series, and I was quite surprised, especially in a laptop. Usually you find out some of those limitations, and you find out some of those things where, it's not going to play as well. But this really did perform pretty well. Overall, this laptop performed great. It stayed fairly cool. I only heard the fans ramp up a couple times. Like I said, Shadow of the Tomb Raider was one of them. It surprised me a little bit, but it did, and Borderlands 3 did not. And on Cinebench, I heard it ramp up, but of course, the CPU, you're taxing the CPU. So as far as browsing the web, looking at things, just kind of generally, playing around with it, the comfort of the keyboard, I was really impressed. So this HP Omen is, I'm not going to say it's much, much better than the desktop that I looked at weeks ago. I will say it's less complicated than that desktop that I was working with weeks ago. And I was very, very impressed with it. I'm very surprised. And if I end up inheriting this laptop eventually, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, know what I mean, I would be very happy to inherit this laptop. So this is pretty solid for a gaming laptop. And to be fair, this is more than they're going to need. But Lisa and Mark have a tendency when they're buying laptops just to get whatever they see and that looks good. And a lot of times it's not something that's going to be future-proof for them a little bit. So my goal here was to help get them something that was going to last them for the next 3, 4, 5 years, or whenever they decide to get laptops. It's not because they go and buy a cheap laptop. It's because they get a laptop they like, and they'll use it for several years because they take care of stuff. And so that's a really, really good thing. It's far more than Mark's going to need on his job. It's far more than Lisa's going to need with her school. And she's actually an instructor, not a student. But she did recently sign up to go back and get her PhD. So she will also be a student as well as an instructor. And a lot to be proud of there. And I'm very, very proud of her as well. So congrats. For this price, $1,400, this ends up being a really, really solid gaming computer that will last them, I'm sure, or if somebody else happens to inherit this in a year or two, it will probably last quite a while there as well. It's a solid buy, and there aren't many times when I say, hey, look, I don't have any regrets about any kind of pre-built or one of the companies like HP, Dell, or whoever that their business is to make thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pre-builts. But it's quite obvious that when you branch off into some of the upper tiers that these companies have, they do put a little bit more effort into it, and it is a little bit better product. Not going to mention anything about Alienware, but that's okay. And other than that, though, I mean, some of these are excellent products. And this one is no different. This one turns out to be a great product, and I'm very glad that I helped them find it and was able to help kind of recommend it to them, and that they got it. It was fun to look at, fun to play with. I think it's going to do them a great job, more than they're going to ever need, and I think it's going to last for a while. So those are my thoughts on it. The HP Omen, we got it, or she got it from Best Buy. I'll go ahead and leave a link to it from Best Buy. Right now, I think it's normal price about $1,399 or $1,400. It goes up and down. I've seen it as low as like $1,350, as high as like $1,479. So it's going to be in that price range. But who knows? Black Friday's coming up, and it's a 13th gen. They're coming out with 14th gen, so maybe the price will bump down a little bit on it. But consider, I would say, comparable laptops similar to this should float around that price, maybe a little bit cheaper. It ends up being a pretty good deal. So if you, that's pretty much that's my thoughts. And other than that, I don't know what to say about it, other than the fact that if I was looking at it, I think that's probably the one I would have bought. So I'm happy I was able to help them. So if you got anything out of the video, go ahead and throw a like on it if you don't mind. If you're not already subscribed, please do that. It would be great to hit 1,000 by the end of the year. I don't think that's really reasonable, but it would be really, really cool. Why the heck not? Let's just go for it. Let's see what happens. If you're not already subscribed, like I said, go ahead and please subscribe. I will have a video coming up not too long from now on all of my socials, because I'll give you guys like a fall update and kind of hit on that, because some things are changing a little bit here and there. And then I got some other stuff coming up. I'd already mentioned the Chromebox in a different video, and what happens when they get rid of the laptop that they did have. Well, I start playing with that, see if I can't make it better. It's definitely not a gaming laptop, and definitely not a 16-inch Omen. But hey, it's worth it. It's something to use, right? Anyway, if you don't do anything else, if you don't visit the socials, subscribe, like, or anything, do me one favor. And that's just be nice to each other. Be kind. Do something nice. Do something kind. It costs nothing to do something kind, and it could make somebody's entire day. Smile, wave, hold the door open, say good morning. Just any of those. Any kind of effort whatsoever, just to, be nice, be kind. You have no idea what difference you can make in somebody else's day. So, until I get myself into something I got no business getting into next time, I'll see you later.